Yeah, I guess I want to talk about the Bills from the general overarching perspective because, as you could tell from the title of our show tonight, we're talking about are the Bills the best team in the AFC? So, Pat, if you
Mhm.
could pull up my tweet from a couple of days ago when I talked about all the turnover that the Bills had in the offseason and what they've been able to do from it, I think we need to start here because when you look at all the losses that the Bills had here, so I said the fact that the Bills lost their all pro wide receiver, all pro cornerback, best safety duo in franchise history, starting center, and their starting wide receiver too, and they somehow got better, it's absolutely wild to me. And a couple of notes that I made there. It was supposed to be their rebuild season. They have over $70 million in dead cap. It was over 30 million from that Diggs trade. And a lot of us, myself included, I was like, okay, this is probably a setback year. I think they can still win the division, reach their status quo of winning that first playoff game, but I don't know if they'll be able to get past the divisional round this year. And then you try to get more money next year. The salary cap should open up a little bit. Maybe you go get the Diggs replacement, and then you hit the ground running in 2025. But through 11 weeks, it's been the best start to any season in my lifetime, as they are 9-2 for the first time since 92, which I think is pretty cool. And I think that the point that we need to bring away from this is that we need to appreciate the jobs that Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, and Josh Allen have done, because the winning culture and the stability that they have established here is something special. And I think that shows how important it is when building a team and when you're trying to construct the winning franchise here. You have to have that big three of a GM, head coach, and a quarterback who can all be on the same page and can be good communicators and are just very good at what they do. Because I feel like a lot of these teams, like let's take the Jets, for example. They have Aaron Rodgers, they have Devontae Adams, and maybe let's just say Quinnen Williams or CJ Mosley. They try to build it up with these stars, and it's like, oh, well, it's Aaron Rodgers' team. No, as you can tell, they fired Robert Salah, and now they just fired their GM and Joe Douglas yesterday. They are a dumpster fire, and I can't wait to talk about them when we do our AFC Power Rankings at the end of the show. This just shows how important it is that instead of having these star players, and this isn't a knock on Stephon Diggs or anything, it's just the overall point is it has to start at the top, and the Bills have it right.
Right. Okay. And yeah, I mean, look, the way that they've developed and look at all the late round hits the Bills have had. Yes, we can talk till we're blue in the face about Cody Ford or I guess Boogie Bashams, I guess. Some second round misses for sure. The Bills, I mean, okay. Yeah, I mean, sure, like a day 3 pick. The Bills have definitely had their misses. Like the difference is there are so many players on third round pick contracts. Cook in a late second round pick contract. You have Terrell Bernard and Dorian Williams on third round pick contracts. You have Khalil Shakir on a day 3 contract. You have so many different players. Christian Benford, one of the best corners in the league, on a 6th round pick contract. Yes, we talk about quarterback all the time. And when you talk about it from a perspective of, yeah, quarterbacks make $50 million. Now you got to win all these things I hear all the time on Twitter. You got to win when the quarterback's on a rookie contract. I mean, there's some validity to that, but the way to counter that is you have a corner one on a 6th round pick contract when a corner makes $25 million. So there's definitely some counter discussions on how you would go about it in a way that makes your roster. Then you have a studly middle linebacker making $1 million. So that you can find out pretty quickly where you save some cap space when you build a roster like that, and not like the Dolphins try to do on defense with the Jalen Ramsey acquisition, which is a good player. He's still a good corner. But outside of that, like they've missed on Xavier Howard's extension, Byron Jones earlier, underneath a few years ago. Like they miss and miss and miss and miss. And some of their best players are their homegrown players like Holland or Zach Sealer. Like exactly. Those are probably some of their best defensive players. So they've been able to stay afloat and maybe make a run at the 7 seed. Indy, Miami, and Denver right there in the one fighting for the 7 seed because they have some homegrown talent, even Tua, Devin Achane. They definitely have some homegrown talent there. The Bills have so much of it, from their running back room to their tight end room to their offensive line, from their tackles that have been drafted to Osiris Torrance. Yes, they free agent acquisition for a backup player, a spot starter in Connor McGovern, and now he's playing top 10 center football. He's actually an upgrade at the center room. So the Bills have made some smart acquisitions. Khalil Shakir, obviously, Keon Coleman. They've made some very smart decisions on the drafting front, where Yeah, I mean, I would say that Bean didn't have his best free agent year, but he had no money. Like, he did his best. His big signing was Samuel, kind of a flop, at least in my opinion. We'll see if that ends up being the case. Matt Collins was still a steady acquisition. Obviously, we know the MVS, who's playing really good football, was a bust. And we know the Mike Edwards story, who's already been cut from Tennessee, so maybe he's just not good. And then Morrow wasn't really anything. He was supposed to be maybe a steadying force at linebacker when needed. They went to Spector when they had some linebacker injuries. So ultimately, and Spector is even a draft choice of the Bills. So they're getting backup level football from a 6th, 7th round pick there too. So ultimately the Bills are doing what they need to do. And then look at the, obviously their slot corner, obviously he's been paid now, but another draft choice that's developed underneath this regime. And Damar Hamlin, starting level safety on a day 3 contract, wherever you put him, he is a safety too. I'm not going to say he's a top end safety. He's a safety too, making minimum salary, basically. So the Bills are getting benefits from and he was the reason Mike Edwards was cut, pretty straight up. Damar Hamlin was the main reason. And then they have Cole Bishop waiting in the wings to potentially be a guy that may have to step in for Hamlin next year. So Kevin, the Bills have drafted extremely well. That's a few free agency flops, but they've tried their best. Brandon being pretty good in free agency, but the draft hits are plethora. They're there. And then that's not to add the depth, the O-line that they added this year in the draft. We're not even talking about Ray Davis. So the Bills have had some very solid draft selections that are only furthering this young depth of this Bills roster. And that's how you sustain a W with a paid quarterback like Josh Allen.
Yeah, and not even those day 3 contracts that they're playing with right now. Look at the undrafted guys like Cam Lewis, Jamarcus Ingram, Ryan Vandemark, a spot starter. These guys who were on the practice squad, and the Bills say, hey, keep working, keep plugging away because your number and name might be called and we really might need you. And that's a perfect example with Ryan Vandemark. Was he on the practice squad? Did he make the 53 going into this season?
Going into this season, he made the 53. Last season, he actually won the swing tackle job. The year we plucked him from the Colts, he was a priority UDFA, meaning he got paid a good amount of money to sign with the sign with the Colts. He was waived probably to be a priority practice squad member, but then chose to sign to the Bills practice squad, stayed the year, played on the practice squad, and then earned a roster spot last September. And then has been on the roster ever since. He's been a pretty pivotal guy. Actually got beat out for the swing tackle job by Grable, another 6th round draft choice. And the Bills would tell you that Grable is the Bills starting or a backup right tackle, where they probably felt like they wanted to roster Grable on game days if something ever happened to Brown, because he was going to win the job. And truthfully, Vandemark's the backup left tackle, and they always expect Dion to play every snap. So there's not really need for him. But we saw right away when he was needed, he's a pivotal depth piece to this team. And Alec Anderson, a guy that plays a lot of snaps, another UDFA player who the Bills have helped develop under Cromer. So just UDFAs across the board that are filling out the rest of the roster. And if you have that, you're going to continue to sustain success when you have big priced players like Josh Allen and some of these contracts coming off the books very shortly that the Bills are going to have a little bit of money next year and a lot more in a couple of years. So they're going to be able, and they're going to have to pay some of these guys we're talking about though. So there's definitely a conundrum there. And now you're inserting Matt Milano, Kevin. The Bills roster development is top of the league.
I mean, let's go off of the Chiefs' point based on, recency bias here, the whole Xavier Worthy experience, right? When people are like, oh man, you could have had Xavier Worthy, but you sent him to Kansas City. Did you not learn your lesson when you gave them Patrick Mahomes? But on the flip side, look at it from Brandon Beane's perspective. He got Keon Coleman and Dwayne Carter out of that. And right now, I would say that the Bills are winning. I know both of those guys are hurt, but I wasn't a big Worthy guy to begin with. You flip him and turn it into Coleman and Carter? I mean, come on. That is Brandon Beane just being an elite general manager. And off of your point about the Dolphins and my point about the Jets, another team that you could talk about is Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. They didn't do anything at free agency. And then a couple of weeks before the season, they gave Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb massive contract extensions. They tied up their funds with those guys. And now they don't have the proper depth or the proper resources to be able to properly build their team. And you're not seeing guys like Ryan Vandemark or Cam Lewis stepping in and making plays for them. And they are just spiraling downward very, very quickly. So I just think it's so cool to see how you can have the general manager, the head coach, and the quarterback in sync. And not only are they in sync, they're all elite in their positions as well.
Yeah, also, if everyone wouldn't mind, smash that like button. It helps us bring you great content and to our show sponsors, the Summit Center and Dave Dengler and Larson Timko. We appreciate every one of our sponsors. Thank you so much.